I scrimped for months to get my daughter a $2,000 laptop. My sister's kids threw it in the fire as my parents laughed. My sister sneered. Maybe this will teach her not to be spoiled. I just smiled. And the entire room fell completely silent when I did this. Can you imagine the sickest betrayal? Not from an enemy, but from your own family. The people who are supposed to love you? What if they stood by, laughing, as your child's dreams were literally burned to ashes right in front of them? That was just the beginning of how my family showed their true colors, and it broke something inside me in a way I never thought possible. So here's the thing about me, Elliot. I'm 28, and I have absolutely busted my butt to get where I am. I'm not talking about some generic, I worked hard so I deserve this coffee kind of way. No, I've been grinding since I was 16, picking up extra shifts, saving every single dollar, painstakingly building a life I could be genuinely proud of. I owe no one anything, and I sure as hell don't take handouts. That's important because my family? They absolutely love to act like I'm still some spoiled kid living under their roof, even though I've been on my own for years. For a while, I honestly thought distance was helping. Fewer forced family dinners, fewer fake smiles, fewer arguments about how Elliot always thinks he's better than us now. I figured if I just kept my head down and focused on my own life, I could actually enjoy the rare times we all got together. But of course, that was just wishful thinking. The real story, the one that broke everything, it starts about 3 months ago. My daughter Leah had just turned 13. She's this amazing, smart, shy kid, and drawing, digital art especially, is her entire world right now. I'd been quietly saving for months to buy her a really good laptop for her birthday. Not some cheap toy, you know? I mean, a proper $2,000 machine that could handle all the intense art programs she wanted to use. She had no idea I was getting it for her. I pictured her opening it, that huge, brilliant smile spreading across her face, staying up all night drawing, just like I used to stay up playing video games as a kid. Man, I was so excited. The problem was, her birthday fell right around Easter this year, which meant the inevitable, messy, over-the-top family gathering at my parents' place. You know the kind. Backyard egg hunt for the little ones, way too much beer for the adults, way too much food, and way too many unsolicited opinions flying around. I actually considered skipping it entirely, just having a quiet weekend with Leah. But she really wanted to see her cousins. So I figured we'd tough it out for a few hours and then make our escape before the drama inevitably started. Except the drama didn't wait for us to leave this time. We showed up early because I'd promised to help Mom set up the tables outside. Leah stayed in the living room, quietly sketching in her notebook while I hauled folding chairs out of the garage. Everything was fine, totally normal. Until my sister Amanda arrived with her 3 kids. Now, I'll try to be polite here, but Amanda's kids are intense. They don't have many rules at home, and Amanda has this infuriating habit of just laughing off whatever they do with, "Oh, they're just kids." Within 10 minutes, they'd pulled Leah's precious sketchbook out of her backpack and were scribbling all over her intricate drawings with permanent markers. Leah came running outside, tears welling up in her eyes, and I could literally feel my blood pressure spike. I grabbed the sketchbook back, told the kids to knock it off, and fully expected Amanda to step in. Instead, she just shrugged and said, "Relax, Elliot. It's just paper." She can draw more. Just paper? My daughter was heartbroken. I wanted to unleash a torrent of words right then, but I swallowed it. Big family day, I told myself. No need to start a war. The rest of the afternoon was a slow, agonizing boil. Those kids kept pushing boundaries, running wild, knocking things over, shouting, throwing candy at each other. At one point, Leah tried to plug in her phone charger, and one of them yanked it out of the wall just to see if she'd get mad. And every single time, Amanda would just laugh it off. "Oh, they're just having fun." When it was finally time for dinner, I felt like I could breathe again. We all gathered around the long tables outside, food steaming in the middle. I had wrapped Leah's laptop in a big gift bag and set it carefully on her chair so she'd find it when she sat down. She opened it slowly, at first confused, and then her face just lit up. "Dad, this is amazing," she said, hugging me so tight I thought she'd never let go. That was the moment I'd been waiting for months. But before I could even take a picture, one of Amanda's kids, the oldest, snatched the laptop right out of her hands. It happened so fast I almost didn't process it. He ran toward the fire pit, the one we'd lit earlier for marshmallows, holding the brand new laptop over his head while the other 2 cheered him on. "Stop!" I yelled, but it was too late. He tossed it in like it was a damn frisbee. The sound it made when it hit the flames was sickening. Leah gasped, then just went completely quiet, staring. My blood went cold. My daughter's dream, her future, burning right in front of me. I literally jumped up, grabbed the fire poker, and fished it out. But the damage was done. The casing had already started to melt, smoking, and that's when I heard it. Laughter. Amanda was laughing. My parents were actually chuckling. My dad even said, "Well, maybe that'll teach her not to be spoiled." I couldn't move for a second. Leah was standing there shaking, tears streaming down her face, clutching her ruined sketchbook. The $2,000 laptop, her birthday gift, was destroyed, and my entire family was sitting there acting like this was some kind of hilarious joke. I set the melted laptop down on the table slowly, carefully, and looked right at Amanda. She smirked and said, "Come on, Elliot. It's just a computer. You can buy another one. Maybe next time get her something she actually needs instead of spoiling her." I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just smiled. And that's when the entire table went quiet because they knew that smile. They knew that smile meant something was coming. I didn't say anything right away. I just stood there with that little half smile that made everyone uncomfortable and sat back down next to Leah. I put my arm around her and pulled her close. She didn't say a word, just kept staring at the ruined laptop on the table. It wasn't just a piece of tech, you know? It was hours of drawings she hadn't backed up yet, projects she'd been working on for weeks. Dinner carried on like nothing had happened. The smell of roasted lamb and garlic bread hung in the air, but it all tasted sour. I barely touched my plate. Leah didn't eat at all. Amanda's kids were laughing and running around again, chasing each other between the tables. My parents started talking about how kids these days needed less screen time anyway, and how maybe this was a sign from above. My dad even said when we were kids we didn't need fancy machines. We played outside and turned out just fine. I almost reminded him that when we were kids, we also didn't have to worry about keeping up with homework portals, online group projects, or digital portfolios for art competitions. But what was the point? He wasn't interested in hearing me out. He was interested in moralizing. After dinner, I excused myself and walked Leah to the car so she could sit somewhere quiet. She clutched the sketchbook that had been scribbled on earlier, holding it like a lifeline. "Do you want to go home?" I asked her gently. She hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't want to give them the satisfaction," she whispered. Man, she was tougher than I gave her credit for sometimes. I kissed the top of her head and told her to text me if she needed me, then walked back inside. That's when things went from bad to worse. Inside the kitchen, Amanda and my mom were standing by the counter whispering and giggling. When I came in, they didn't even stop. They just switched to that fake nice tone people use when they've been caught. "Oh, Elliot," my mom said. "Don't look so serious. You're going to give yourself wrinkles. It was just a prank." "A prank?" I repeated, keeping my voice dangerously even. Amanda crossed her arms and smirked. "You're acting like they burned down your house. It's just a laptop. If you didn't want them touching it, you should have waited until after dinner to give it to her. They're kids, Elliot. Kids get curious." "That wasn't curiosity," I said, feeling my jaw tighten. "That was mean. And it's not the first time they've done something like this. Last Christmas, they dumped juice all over Leah's keyboard, and you laughed then, too." Amanda rolled her eyes. "You're always keeping score. Maybe if Leah wasn't so uptight about her stuff, they wouldn't mess with it." "She's 13, I said, my voice rising a little despite myself. "She's allowed to care about her things. And I worked months of overtime to buy that laptop. It wasn't just a toy." Amanda shrugged, clearly done with the conversation. "Then buy another one. Problem solved." Before I could respond, my dad walked in with a beer and said, "Are we still on about this? Elliot, you have to learn to let things go. They're just kids." I glanced at the melted laptop still sitting on the counter and then back at him. "You think it's funny until someone throws one of your things in the fire." Dad took a swig of beer and said flatly, "Nothing I own is fragile enough to be ruined by a fire. I buy things that last." That was it. That was the absolute moment I knew. They weren't going to apologize. They weren't going to offer to replace it. They weren't even going to pretend to feel bad. The rest of the night was a slow drip of disrespect. Every time Amanda's kids ran through the house screaming, my parents would chuckle and say, "They've got so much energy, isn't it great?" Every time Leah came inside, they'd find some way to tease her. "Still sad about your computer?" one of them would say. "Maybe you can draw on the walls instead." At one point, Amanda even pulled me aside and said, "You know, If you'd stopped spoiling her, she wouldn't be so sensitive. You treat her like she's made of glass. Maybe she needs to toughen up." I stared at her for a long moment and said quietly, "I hope you remember saying that." By the time dessert rolled around, I was done pretending. I didn't eat, didn't speak, just sat there watching. I started noticing things I hadn't paid attention to before. How my parents lit up when Amanda's kids did something cute. How they completely ignored Leah. How they never asked her about school or her art. When Leah finally came back inside and sat next to me, she was quiet, but her eyes were still red. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and Amanda's oldest, who's 9, hyped up on sugar, piped up. "Why is she still sad? It's just a dumb laptop." Amanda laughed. "Because your cousin's dramatic, sweetie." I didn't even look at them this time. I just kept stroking Leah's hair and waited for the night to end. Eventually, Mom brought out coffee and started passing around leftovers. "Elliot, take some home with you," she said. "No thanks," I said evenly. "We're leaving." Amanda smirked. "Running away already?" I stood up, helped Leah into her coat, and turned to face them. "No," I said, my voice firm. "I just think it's better if we go before something else of mine ends up in the fire." Dad scoffed. "Oh, for crying out loud, you're overreacting." I smiled again, that same smile from earlier, and said, "You keep telling yourself that." We left without another word, but the silence in that room as we walked out told me everything I needed to know. When I got home, Leah went straight to her room. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the empty gift bag I'd brought home with me. Something inside me shifted that night. I'd spent years trying to keep the peace, trying to be the bigger person. But watching Leah cry while everyone laughed at her, it broke something in me. And as I sat there, I started thinking about everything I'd done for this family over the years. The bills I'd covered when Amanda forgot to pay rent. The weekends I'd spent fixing up Mom and Dad's house. The times I'd bailed them out without asking for anything in return. The more I thought about it, the more that quiet smile started, creeping back onto my face because I realized I wasn't done yet. I had options, and I had time. And if they thought throwing one laptop in the fire was the end of the story, they had no idea what was coming next. The next few weeks after Easter were tense, but strangely quiet. I didn't hear from Amanda or my parents, which wasn't that unusual. We weren't exactly the daily call kind of family, but this silence had a weight to it. Normally, Mom would text me a reminder about Leah's birthday thank you cards or send a recipe she thought I'd like. This time, nothing. Not even a passive-aggressive message about moving on. Leah was doing better by then. I'd managed to buy her a cheaper temporary laptop so she could keep up with her schoolwork, but it wasn't the same. I caught her staring at the old melted one in the garage a few times, like she was holding a vigil for it. I told her I'd replace it when I could, and she nodded, but I could tell she wasn't just sad about the laptop. She was hurt by how everyone had treated her. The laughter, the teasing, that kind of thing sticks with a kid. Then, about a month later, I got a call from my mom. I hesitated before picking up, but curiosity won out. "Elliot," she said in that falsely sweet tone she uses when she's about to ask for something. "Your sister is in a bit of a tough spot right now. They've had some unexpected expenses come up, and she was wondering if you could help out just for a few weeks." I almost laughed. "Let me guess. Rent again?" "Well," Mom trailed off, "it's just until things stabilize. You know how hard it is for them with 3 kids. You're in a better position than they are." I couldn't help it. I actually did laugh this time. A short, humorless sound. "You mean the same sister whose kids destroyed a $2,000 laptop last month while everyone laughed?" Mom sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Elliot, you can't hold on to that forever. It was an accident." "It wasn't an accident," I said flatly. "And no, I'm not covering Amanda's rent again. If she's struggling, maybe she can sell some of those fancy handbags she buys or cut back on her spa days." There was a long pause. Then Mom said, "You've changed. You used to be so generous with family." "I still am," I said, "just not with people who think it's funny when my kid cries." That was the end of that conversation, or so I thought. A week later, I went to check my joint account, the one I had set up years ago to help my parents pay certain bills in case of emergencies. I didn't keep much in there anymore, just enough to cover small things if they needed them. And that's when I saw it. A withdrawal. A big one. Nearly $1,800 gone in a single transfer straight to Amanda's bank account. I stared at the transaction history for a long time, my heart pounding. I hadn't authorized that. I hadn't even given them access to the account in years, or so I thought. Then it hit me. I'd given Mom the login info ages ago, back when I used to trust her with this kind of thing. I'd forgotten to change it. I called her immediately. "Mom," I said, not bothering to hide my anger. "Why did $2,000 just disappear from the joint account?" There was silence on the other end, then a faint, "Oh, that." "Yes," I said sharply. "That. Care to explain?" She sighed like I was inconveniencing her. "Amanda was about to get evicted, Elliot. We didn't have a choice." "You didn't have a choice?" I said, my voice rising. "That wasn't your money to give. You didn't even ask me." "She's your sister," Mom snapped. "You're supposed to help her. You always used to step up when the family needed you." Something inside me went cold. "So now we're just taking money behind each other's backs?" "It's not behind your back," she said defensively. "You would have said no, and she needed it." I let out a bitter laugh. "You're right. I would have said no because I'm not going to reward her for what happened at Easter. You all laughed at my daughter when she cried. You acted like her birthday present didn't matter. And now you expect me to bail her out like nothing happened." "She's family, Elliot," Mom said. "That comes first." "No," I said quietly. "My daughter comes first. And thanks to you, I can't buy her the replacement laptop I promised her this month. So congratulations. You didn't just betray me. You punished Leah, too." Mom didn't respond to that. She just muttered something about me being dramatic and hung up. I sat there for a long time staring at my phone, the fury boiling in my chest. It wasn't about the money. Not really. I could make it back. It was the principle. They had crossed a line. 2 days later, Amanda called me herself. "I hear you're mad," she said breezily, as if she hadn't just stolen from me. "Mad doesn't cover it," I said. She chuckled. "Look, I'll pay you back when I can, but you know things are tight right now. Maybe you should stop holding grudges. It's just money. You make plenty of it." I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Amanda, you didn't even apologize for what your kids did. You laughed. You mocked Leah. And now you've taken money I didn't agree to give you." She sighed like I was the difficult one. "You always make everything about you. Maybe if you'd been around more, my kids would respect your stuff. You're not exactly Uncle of the Year." You know what? That was the last straw. "You're right," I said, my voice calm. Too calm. "I'm not Uncle of the Year, and you're about to find out what that means." I hung up before she could respond. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there in my quiet kitchen, smiling that same quiet smile I'd smiled on Easter Sunday, because now it wasn't just about a laptop. This was about respect. This was about teaching them a lesson they wouldn't forget. And if they thought taking my money was going to make me roll over and play nice, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. After that phone call, something in me went still. Not calm, just still, like the air right before a storm breaks. For days, I walked around in a haze. I'd go to work, come home, make dinner for Leah, and sit at the table with her, forcing myself to smile and ask about her day. She deserved that. She deserved a dad who was present. But the whole time, my mind was elsewhere, playing the same conversations over and over like a broken record. "You always used to step up when the family needed you." "You're not exactly Uncle of the Year." The words stuck like thorns. That weekend, I drove out to the park with Leah just to get out of the house. We sat on a bench by the lake, watching the ducks. She was sketching in her battered notebook, flipping past the pages that had been ruined at Easter. She'd salvaged what she could. Some of the drawings were half erased with angry scribbles layered over them like scars on paper. "Dad," she asked after a while, not looking up, "why do they hate me?" It felt like someone punched me in the chest. "They don't hate you, kiddo," I said quickly. She finally glanced up at me, her face serious. "They laughed when I cried." Grandma laughed. Grandpa laughed. And Amanda said I was dramatic. That's not what people do if they care about you. I swallowed hard. You're right. They should have cared more. And I'm sorry you had to go through that. She closed her notebook and hugged it to her chest. I don't want to go to Grandma's house anymore. You don't have to, I said immediately. We're done forcing ourselves to be around people who don't respect us. Her shoulders relaxed a little at that, but I could still see the hurt in her eyes. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the living room in the dark, staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed once. A group text from Mom about a family barbecue coming up. I didn't even open it. For the first time in years, I skipped one of those gatherings. No excuses, no explanations. Just didn't show up. And you know what? The sky didn't fall. Nobody called to check on me. Nobody asked if Leah was okay. A week later, Mom sent another text. You missed a great cookout. With a photo of Amanda's kids roasting marshmallows around the same fire pit where my daughter's birthday present had burned. It was like salt in an open wound. At work, I found myself distracted. I was good at my job, dependable, organized, but my mind kept drifting back to the betrayal. I'd find myself staring at spreadsheets, thinking about that $1,800 that had been yanked out of my account without permission, thinking about how easy it had been for them to laugh at Leah's pain, and then turn around and use my hard-earned money to cover Amanda's bills. One afternoon, my manager pulled me aside. Everything okay at home? She asked gently. I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, just family stuff. She gave me a sympathetic look. Don't let them drain you dry, Elliot. You're one of our best, but you've got to look after yourself, too. That stuck with me. That night, after Leah went to bed, I finally did what I should have done years ago. I logged into the joint account and transferred every last cent into my personal savings. Then I closed the account completely, sent confirmation emails to the bank, and deleted the login from my password manager. Then I opened a spreadsheet, the same kind of spreadsheet I used at work, and started making a list. Not just of money I'd given Amanda over the years, but every favor, every weekend I'd spent helping her move, every last-minute babysitting session, every loan that was never repaid. The total shocked even me. It wasn't just the money. It was the time, the energy, the emotional bandwidth I'd given without hesitation. I'd been their safety net for years, and the first time I said no, they laughed at me and stole from me. Anyway, I shut the laptop and sat there in the dark, letting the anger simmer. The next day, I started taking small steps. I called my insurance company and removed Amanda as an emergency contact. I checked the deed to my house and the beneficiary information on my accounts, making sure everything went to Leah, no one else. It felt cold doing those things. It felt like cutting pieces of my old life away. But with every step, I felt a little lighter. A week later, Amanda posted a picture on social media of her kids opening new tablets, expensive ones, the kind that cost as much as Leah's melted laptop. The caption read, "Finally got the kids some tech, so they stopped fighting over mine, LOL." I stared at that photo for a long time. My hands were steady when I took a screenshot and saved it. Not because I was going to confront her with it. No, I was past that. It was evidence. Proof. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing. When I moved, it was going to be permanent. There would be no talking it out, no tearful reunions. Whatever I did next would set the tone for the rest of my relationship with this family. One night, Leah found me sitting at the kitchen table with my spreadsheet open. "What are you doing?" she asked. I smiled faintly. Planning. Planning what? Making sure this doesn't happen again. She studied me for a moment, then nodded like she understood. Good, she said quietly. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The anger was still there, sharp, electric, but it was starting to feel less like a weight and more like a tool. Something I could use because I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to make sure they knew exactly what they'd lost. And I was going to do it in a way they would never forget. The weeks that followed felt strangely peaceful. Not happy, not yet, but quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long time, my life wasn't orbiting around family drama or last-minute emergencies. It was just me and Leah figuring things out together. With the joint account gone, I felt safer. I didn't wake up dreading bank notifications, wondering what had been drained overnight. I went through every single shared account, every utility bill, every subscription, and made sure there were no back doors left open. It was tedious, but by the end of the month, my finances were completely in my control again. That's when something surprising happened. I realized I had money to spare. See, for years I'd been funneling hundreds, sometimes thousands, into Amanda's temporary crises. Without that drain, my savings started to grow faster than I'd ever seen before. After 3 months, I had enough not only to replace Leah's laptop with something even better, but also to finally upgrade my own ancient car, something I'd been putting off forever. I didn't rush out and buy anything flashy. I played it smart. I spent hours researching, finding the perfect machine for Leah, one with all the specs she dreamed of. When it arrived, I didn't make a big production out of it. I just left it on her desk with a note. For you. Keep creating. The look on her face when she found it was worth every penny. She hugged me so tight I almost fell over. For the first time since Easter, I saw her light up again. After that, things started clicking into place. Work noticed my improved focus and offered me a promotion. Nothing huge, but enough to bump my salary and give me more control over my schedule. With that came a new kind of confidence. I started saying no to things more often. Not just to my family, but to anything that didn't align with what Leah and I needed. No to extra unpaid projects at work that used to drain me. No to neighbors asking me to wash their pets for free because you're home anyway, and every no felt like a brick being lifted off my chest. Then came the barbecue invitation. Mom sent another group text, this time about a big 4th of July celebration they were planning. Normally, I would have ignored it, but this time I typed back a single message. We won't be there. Have fun. It was amazing how fast the responses started coming in. Amanda. Seriously, you're still sulking. Dad. This is getting ridiculous, Elliot. Mom. Family is all we have. Stop holding grudges. I didn't reply. Instead, I spent that weekend taking Leah on a small road trip. Just the two of us, windows down, music blasting, stopping at little roadside diners and sketching landscapes together. It was the first holiday weekend that didn't end with me exhausted or angry. That trip gave me clarity. See, up until then, I'd been thinking about revenge as this big, explosive thing, something dramatic, cinematic, final. But sitting there on a picnic bench with Leah eating ice cream, I realized I didn't need a grand gesture. At least not yet. I just needed to keep building our life until it was so solid that nothing they did could touch us. So I started working on that. I picked up a few freelance projects on the side, funneling the extra income into a savings account, earmarked just for Leah's future, college, travel, whatever she wanted. I fixed up my house, replacing the drafty windows and painting the kitchen the bright color she'd been asking for. Slowly, my house stopped feeling like a crash pad and started feeling like a home. One evening, Leah and I sat on the porch watching the sunset. She was working on a digital portrait, the glow of her new laptop reflecting on her face. You seem happier, she said quietly. I am, I admitted. Do you feel safer now? She nodded. Yeah, I like it better when it's just us. Her words landed harder than she probably meant them to, but she was right. It was better when it was just us. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized I wasn't just healing. I was getting stronger. And with that strength came opportunity. One afternoon, completely by chance, I ran into a guy I used to know from high school, Derek, who now worked at a supplier company my dad's business relied on. We grabbed coffee and caught up. And somewhere in the middle of the conversation, he let it slip that Amanda and my dad had been having trouble keeping their accounts current with vendors. Honestly, he said, stirring his coffee, if they miss one more payment, we might have to drop them as a client. But hey, that's none of your business, right? He laughed. I smiled faintly. Right, none of my business. But in the back of my mind, gears started turning because maybe it was my business. Maybe I didn't need to storm into family gatherings and scream about what happened. Maybe I didn't need to demand apologies that would never come. Maybe the best revenge wasn't loud. Maybe it was quiet, strategic, methodical. Maybe it was letting them feel what I felt. Powerless. That night, I pulled out my spreadsheet again. This time, instead of just cataloging what I'd lost, I started adding notes, contacts I had in the industry, opportunities no one knew about that I hadn't shared with Dad's business, ways I could leverage what I knew to change the game entirely. For the first time, I wasn't just stewing over what had happened. I was thinking ahead. Leah peeked over my shoulder. What are you working on? I closed the laptop gently, just making sure we're ready for the next chapter. She smiled and went back to her room, humming. And I sat there in the quiet, feeling that familiar smile spread across my face again. Not bitter this time, but sharp, focused. Because I wasn't at rock bottom anymore. I was climbing, and when I reached the top, they were going to see just how far I'd come. Over the next several months, things began to shift in ways that felt almost too perfectly timed, like the universe was nudging me towards something bigger. At work, my promotion officially kicked in, and with it came access to certain industry contacts and resources that I hadn't had before. I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was the point person for a major supplier contract. That meant I was suddenly sitting in meetings with people who handled the same accounts my dad's business relied on. I didn't say anything about it to my family. I didn't need to. I just listened quietly, absorbing information. And what I learned painted a very clear picture. Dad's business was skating on thin ice. The industry was shifting. Contracts were becoming more competitive, and they had been barely keeping up with orders. They'd already missed 2 shipments that quarter, something I wouldn't have known if I wasn't in those meetings. I didn't intervene. I didn't warn them. Instead, I went home and opened that spreadsheet again, adding more notes, more connections, more leverage. I was building a web not to trap myself in their drama again, but to make sure that when I moved, I had the power to make it count. Meanwhile, Amanda's social media presence was as loud as ever. Pictures of self-care days at spas, weekend getaways with her husband, expensive brunches with her friends, all while I knew from that bank transfer incident that they'd been a breath away from eviction not too long ago. One post in particular caught my eye, a picture of her kids holding new puppies, grinning ear to ear. "Welcome to the family, Daisy and Max," the caption read, 2 purebred dogs. I stared at that post for a long time before screenshotting it. Not because I cared about her buying dogs. She could spend her money however she wanted, but because it was another piece of the puzzle. Another example of how they always seemed to have money for luxuries, but came crying to me whenever the rent was due. Then came the breaking point. Mom called one evening while Leah and I were watching a movie. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. "Elliot," she said without even a hello. "We need your help again. Amanda's car broke down, and she needs a loaner until they can get a new one. Can Leah stay with you this weekend so we can drive them around?" I muted the TV. "Mom, I always have Leah. She lives with me." Mom huffed. "You know what I mean. Can you drive them? They can't afford to rent a car right now." I almost laughed. "You're asking me to chauffeur Amanda and her kids around all weekend after everything that happened?" "It's what family does," Mom said, her voice sharp. Something inside me snapped. "No," I said. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't laugh while a 13-year-old cries. And family doesn't use each other like free Uber drivers." There was a long silence on the other end before Mom said coldly, "I'm sorry you feel that way." Click. She hung up. I sat there for a while, the room quiet except for the muted TV. Leah was curled up next to me, watching me carefully. "You okay?" she asked. I took a deep breath and nodded. Better than okay. I think I finally know what I'm going to do. That night, I stayed up late at the kitchen table, not just adding notes to my spreadsheet, but building an actual plan. Step 1, lock down every single piece of leverage I had. I updated my will and trust, ensuring that if anything happened to me, everything went straight to Leah with no interference from my parents. I met with a financial planner, moving certain accounts into places they couldn't touch. Step 2, position myself where my absence would hurt. My dad's business depended on a few key supplier relationships, one of which I now had influence over through my job. I didn't need to sabotage anything. All I had to do was stop going out of my way to smooth things over for them like I'd always done. Step 3, gather proof. I printed copies of every bank transaction where I'd bailed them out. Every text message where they'd mocked me for saying no. Every screenshot of Amanda flaunting her luxuries while begging for help. I kept it all in a neat folder, not for revenge yet, but because I wanted a record. I wanted the truth documented. Around this time, Derek, the guy from high school, called me up. "Hey," he said, "your dad's company put in a big order with us, but we're not sure we can fulfill it on their timeline. They've been slow to pay lately, and the boss isn't happy." I nodded to myself. "Thanks for the heads up." "Just thought you'd want to know," he said. "You always were the guy who kept things running." Not anymore, I thought. Meanwhile, Leah was thriving. She was entering art contests, winning a few, and even selling small commissions online. I was so proud of her. Watching her confidence grow lit something in me. Reminded me why I was doing all of this. One evening, as I was cooking dinner, she came into the kitchen with her sketchbook. "Can I show you something?" she asked. She flipped it open to a drawing she'd been working on. A big tree with deep roots standing tall against a storm. "It's us," she said shyly. I looked closer. Sure enough, there were two little figures at the base of the tree holding hands. "It's perfect," I said, feeling my throat tighten. And it was, because that's what we were now. Rooted, steady, no longer blown around by whatever drama Amanda or my parents stirred up. I was almost ready. I could feel it. And when the opportunity finally came, I wasn't just going to take it. I was going to make sure they understood exactly why it was happening. The setup was nearly complete. All I needed was the right moment to strike. And something told me deep down that moment was coming sooner than they thought. It happened on a Tuesday morning. The kind of day that feels ordinary until something clicks and you realize it isn't. I was halfway through my coffee when my work email pinged with a notice. The supplier meeting I'd been preparing for had been moved up. Normally, this wouldn't be a big deal, but this particular meeting was about contract renewals, including the account tied to my dad's business. And because of my promotion, I wasn't just in the room this time. I was one of the people reviewing their payment history and performance metrics. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't lie. I didn't have to. The numbers spoke for themselves. Late payments, missed shipments, and an overdue balance that had been rolled over more than once. The company had been given warnings before, but they kept skating by, relying on goodwill and personal relationships. Only now I was one of those relationships, and I wasn't going to cover for them anymore. When the discussion turned to their account, I stayed quiet at first, letting the other managers speak. Eventually, the regional director looked at me and asked for my input. I took a slow sip of my coffee, set the cup down, and said evenly, "Based on the data, they've been given 3 grace periods in the last 12 months. At this point, continuing the contract without a formal payment plan in place would be a liability." It was calm, professional, unemotional, but I knew exactly what it meant. No more special treatment, no more last-minute extensions. If they wanted to keep the account, they'd have to pay up front, something I knew would hit them hard. The motion passed. By the time I got home that evening, my phone had 3 missed calls from Dad and 1 from Mom. I didn't answer. Instead, I made dinner for Leah, sat with her while she worked on a new art piece, and waited. The next morning, Dad finally got through. "Elliot," he said, not even bothering with hello. "Did you tell them to put us on prepaid?" I stayed quiet for a beat before answering. "No, I told them to treat you like every other client." "Big difference." "You know, we don't have the cash flow for that," he snapped. "We'll go under." I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you laughed while my kid cried and then helped yourself to my bank account." There was silence on the other end. "You're punishing the whole family for one mistake," he finally said. I smiled faintly. "No, Dad, I'm just done cleaning up after you." Click. I hung up before he could respond. That was step 1. Step 2 came a few weeks later when Amanda posted a long, dramatic Facebook status about how certain people had turned their backs on family and left them to struggle. The comments were full of her friends telling her how strong she was, how unfair it all was. I didn't reply publicly. Instead, I printed out every screenshot I had. The stolen money, the luxury purchases, the mocking texts, and sent a single envelope to Amanda's husband's office with a short note. "Since you keep asking where the money goes, here's your answer." I didn't sign it. 3 days later, Amanda called me furious. "How dare you go behind my back like that?" she shouted. "You went behind mine first," I said calmly. "Consider us even." She sputtered something about me ruining her marriage and hung up. I didn't feel guilty, not even a little. Step 3 was the most satisfying of all. I took Leah with me to a local art fair one weekend where she had a booth to sell her work. Halfway through the day, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Mom. She'd apparently heard about the fair through a mutual acquaintance and decided to drop by. I could feel Leah tense beside me, but I stayed calm. "Hi, Mom," I said evenly. She glanced at the table of Leah's art, clearly surprised. I didn't know she was doing this. "You wouldn't," I said. "You've been too busy." Mom frowned. "Elliot, we miss you at family dinners," I smiled. "Then maybe next time you'll think twice before laughing at my daughter's pain." Her face went pale. Before she could respond, a customer approached to buy one of Leah's prints. I turned my attention back to them, effectively ending the conversation. When Mom left, Leah looked up at me and whispered, "You didn't yell." Nope, I said, smiling. Didn't need to, because that was the point. I wasn't raging at them anymore. I wasn't begging for apologies or trying to make them see my side. I was living my life, building something with Leah, and letting the consequences of their actions catch up with them naturally. The calls kept coming over the next month. Dad trying to negotiate better terms with the supplier. Mom trying to get me to be reasonable. Amanda leaving me voicemails alternating between rage and tears. I didn't block them. I didn't engage. I just let them sit with the silence. And the longer they sat with it, the more desperate they seemed to get. One evening, Leah and I were having dinner when I got a text from Dad. We're selling the house. Hope you're happy. I stared at it for a long moment, then put the phone face down on the table and took another bite of dinner because I was happy, happier than I'd been in years. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally in control. The text about selling the house sat in my phone like a brick for a day before I even acknowledged it. Not because I was indifferent, but because for the first time in years, it wasn't my problem to solve. It wasn't my job to fix what they broke. 2 weeks later, I heard through Derek that the sale had gone through quickly. Too quickly. Dad had apparently accepted an offer well below market value just to get out from under the debt before it swallowed them. Their business had been forced onto prepaid with not just my company's supplier, but 2 others, which meant they were bleeding cash flow. Amanda had quietly deactivated her Facebook account, which told me her marriage really had been shaken by the envelope I'd sent. Then came the call that changed everything. It was Mom again, her voice quieter this time, almost timid. "Elliot," she said, "can we talk?" I hesitated, but agreed to meet her in person. Neutral Ground, a little cafe downtown. When I walked in, she was already there nursing a cup of coffee like it was a lifeline. She looked older than I remembered, more tired. "Thank you for coming," she said. I sat down waiting. She took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology, we all do. We laughed when we should have defended Leah. We took from you when we should have respected your boundaries." Her voice broke a little on that last part. "And we've paid for it." And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. "You sold the house," I said. She nodded. "We didn't have a choice. Your father's business can't keep running the way it was. We should have listened to you sooner. We should have appreciated everything you did for us instead of expecting it." I let the silence stretch for a long time, watching her squirm. Finally, I said, "Do you understand now why I stopped helping? Why I stopped showing up?" She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes, and I'm sorry it took losing everything to get it through our heads." I studied her for a moment, then leaned back in my chair. "You can apologize to Leah yourself. She's the one who deserved better." Her eyes widened a little, but she nodded. "I will. We parted on neutral terms. Not warm, but not hostile either." A week later, I hosted a small dinner at my house. Not a family dinner, not like the old days. Just me, Leah, and a couple of close friends. It was the first time my house felt truly alive, full of laughter that wasn't forced or cruel. Halfway through the evening, there was a knock at the door. Amanda. I almost didn't open it, but Leah glanced at me, curious, and I figured it was time to finish this. Amanda stood there on the porch looking small. Not angry, not defiant, just exhausted. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. She didn't waste time. "You ruined me, Elliot. My marriage is hanging by a thread. We had to rehome the dogs. The kids ask why we don't see you anymore." I crossed my arms. "You ruined yourself." "I just stopped cleaning up after you," she swallowed hard. "I didn't know you'd actually let us fall. You always caught us before." "That's the problem," I said. "I kept catching you, and you never learned how to land on your own feet." She flinched at that, but nodded. I wanted you to know I'm sorry for the laptop, for taking your money, for all of it." I stared at her for a long moment before saying quietly, "Do you know what Leah asked me that night?" Amanda shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "She asked why you all hated her. She thought there was something wrong with her. She cried herself to sleep and you laughed." Amanda broke then. "I know. I can't take it back." "No," I said. "But you can teach your kids what respect looks like, because if they grow up thinking this is how you treat family, they're going to lose people the way you lost me." She nodded, biting her lip. I didn't invite her in. I didn't hug her, but I closed the door that night with something I hadn't felt in months. Closure. Inside, Leah was sitting at the table with our friends, smiling. When she saw me, she asked, "Everything okay?" I smiled, a real smile this time, and nodded. "Yeah, kiddo. Everything's okay. Dinner that night felt like a celebration, not just of the end of a chapter, but the start of something new. Weeks passed, and the calls from my parents slowed to a trickle. They never tried to guilt me again. Amanda stayed quiet too, and I realized I'd gotten exactly what I wanted. Not revenge for revenge's sake, but a life where Leah and I were no longer the punchline to someone else's joke. The final quiet moment came one evening when Leah brought me a new drawing. It was of that same big tree she'd sketched months before. Only now the storm had passed. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, and the two little figures at the bottom were smiling. "Looks like we made it through," she said simply. I framed it and hung it in the living room, right where the melted laptop used to sit before I'd thrown it away because we had made it through. And the next time my family tried to call, to complain, to pull me back into their chaos, I didn't answer. Not out of anger, but out of peace. Because for the first time in years, I was exactly where I needed to be, with the only person who truly mattered. Building a life that no one could burn down again. And that was the final word. Pause, slightly softer, more reflective tone. Seriously, I've replayed this entire story 1,000 times in my head. What would you have done in my shoes? How far would you go to protect your child when your own family betrays you? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear what you think.